start our conversation with Vinay Vutukuru. Vinay is a senior agriculture specialist at the World Bank, and he leads the agriculture portfolio for the bank in Kenya. And Vinay, we just heard a really great overview about sort of the trends that we're seeing, but we also want to start talking about solutions. And I was hoping you could lead us off talking about the 1 million farmer platform that the World Bank is supporting. Could you explain what that is, what the aspirations are? It sounds like it's in the name, but we would all love to learn from that. So if you could get us started, I'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Alicia, and thank you so much for inviting me to this very interesting panel. And I think this is a nice segue to the presentation made by Edwin. And Edwin spoke about how I think there is a clear shift towards platforms which enable farmers to access bundled services. So the 1 million platform is one such platform. So let me just give you the context in which we launched this platform and where we are and what have we achieved so far. The World Bank here, if you look at in Kenya, we have two large investments, the Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Project and the National Agriculture Rural Inclusive Growth Project. Both these projects cover all the 45 rural counties here in Kenya, and the cumulative investment about $500 million. And in a nutshell, these projects are about mobilizing farmers into farmer producer organizations across specific value chains, building their capacity and enabling their access to inputs, extension, and market linkages, and also making the accompanying value chain investments. Now, we realize that one of the biggest kind of bottlenecks or constraints is the last mile service delivery. And it's in this context that we launched a challenge in April 2019, where we invited homegrown kind of agriculture tech startups in Kenya to come and pitch as to how they can actually solve the last mile service delivery problem along four areas, basically productivity enhancement services, access to financial services, market linkages, and data analytics. And we got a great response, and through a rigorous selection process, we identified 14 startups who are then facilitated to have MOUs with the public sector in the form of county government. So as we speak, we have 15 active startups which are partnering and working on the ground with 16 counties. And the idea was very simple. Through the bank projects, we have a lot of what we call the public good investment, which is mobilization costs, equipment costs, infrastructure costs. So what we thought is, can we really complement this public good investment with the innovation of the active startups, whether it's JHIL's Hello Tractor, or a startup called DigiCow, or even Digital Green, which is also one of the 15 who are working with the counties. And so in a way, this was a win-win-win solution for the counties. It meant that through the partnership with these active startups, the last mile service delivery was being transformed. For the farmers, it meant that they're able to access extension, market linkages, or inputs through these active startups in a much better way, right at their doorstep. And for the active startup, it meant that the farmer acquisition cost was much lesser because that was coming through the bank investment. So in that sense, it made it easier for them to scale up. So I think right now, as we speak, we have about 65,000 farmers, not just users, as Edwin said, who are actually, using the services. Our aspiration is we have cumulatively 1 million farmers who are part of these two projects in Kenya. So over the next 3 to 4 years, we'd like to have more counties coming and partnering with active startups. And we want more active startups to be part of this partnership. And cumulatively, we hope to cover 1 million farmers. Just one last point before I kind of hand it back to Eliza. I think this is a great model because I think across Africa, you'll see that because of the fiscal stress and more so with the COVID coming in, the ability for the public sector to employ more extension personnel is going to be limited. In this context, the digital services through these private sector, I think is the way forward because It enables access to extension services, a variety of extension services and market linkages for farmers without the public sector actually investing heavily on extension personnel. But I think what is very, very important for this to happen is an attitudinal shift from the public sector to be open to such private sector partnerships, and also make some, I would say, accompanying authorizing investments in terms of mobilization of farmers, having a good farmer database, which will make the job much more easier for the active startups. And of course, for the private sector, it needs some patience, because partnership with the public sector can be much slower than it is usually for these active startups. But that patience in the long run, I'm sure, will really pay them handsome dividends. I'll stop here, Elisa.
Thanks, Vinay. Just a quick follow-up question before we go to our next panelist. I just wanted to come back to your point on how public sector is going to need to get more comfortable with partnering with different kinds of providers, including private sector. Could you just say a little bit about what you think the discomfort stems from? Is it about making sure we have accurate information being passed on to farmers? Is it about having to manage so many different kinds of partners? What are the sort of discomforts or adjustments government needs to get used to?
It's a combination of the two you mentioned, Elisa. Plus, to be very honest, kind of some basic I would use the word mistrust, that is the private sector kind of taking away too much of profit at the cost of at the expense of the farmer. So I think that's more a behavioral thing. I think being convinced that there's a pie where something can be shared both by the farmer and by the private sector, coming in is a critical concept. So that basic misunderstanding that maybe the private sector is out to also pick up the share of the profit for the farmer is something that needs to gradually shift.
Thanks so much.